Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our regular council meeting of April 11th, 2023. Clerk, could I please have the calling of the roll?
Mayor Sidney.
Present.
Reeve Eman.
Present.
Councillor Sobalski. Councillor Dick.
Present.
Councillor Legree.
Present.
Councillor McDonald.
Present.
And Councillor McWhirter.
Present.
Mayor Sidney, we've got quorum.
Thank you very much. As we gather, we would like to acknowledge on behalf of Council and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Could I please have you stand for O Canada? Any declaration of interest? Councillor Dick.
Thank you, Mayor Sidney. Last council meeting, I made a mistake. I actually abstained from a vote when it should have been a pecuniary interest. The item number was D5.4, the services award of tender. And the reason I'm declaring is one of the bidding parties is a client of mine through one of my businesses. So I'm just declaring now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. I should note and commend Councillor Dick. He came right over after the meeting was over to ask to check with the clerk and myself and the CAO. So he recognized it immediately and acted promptly. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McWhirter.
Last time we had a discussion behind closed doors, I declared a conflict of pecuniary interest, and then the last one was to do with the same item, and I abstained from participating because it was too close to it. I may do that again when we go closed session. I just want to make note of it.
Yep, perfect. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Council. Presentations, delegations, or announcements? Any community announcements that Council has to bring forward? Hearing none. On to Council orientation. Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, MPACT. Jennifer Gruntz is here to present, and I want to welcome you to Renfrew and to our Council meeting, and I'll turn it over to you.
Raise it, put it up, that's okay. Yeah, thank you so much for having me here today. It was lovely. I was able to spend a good chunk of the afternoon at the office, just working with staff and getting to know each other a little bit better, just to try and, continue our relationship between MPAC and municipalities. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jennifer Gruntz, and I work for the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, and I'm the account manager, and I look after all of Renfrew County and all of the each office. So congratulations to all of you on your positions, and I look forward to getting to know you all a little bit better. Hopefully this won't be our first meeting. It'll be a few years of continuing on growing that relationship. I know it's a fairly new council here, so any questions, please, that's what we're here, that's what I'm here to help with. And, if I can't answer something for you, I have a whole team behind me that can get answers to any questions and stuff that you may have on a go forward. Okay. So just my goal today is just to basically give a high level on MPAC and who we are and what we do, just to kind of give you, so there's a bunch of information here and it's a lot to digest in one night. So again, any questions going forward, please, let me know. So our job is to assess and classify more than 5.5 million properties across Ontario, and that's a combined value of more than $3 trillion. So in the past year, Ontario has grown by approximately 45,000 new residential homes. And in 2022, we added more than $37 billion to Ontario's assessment roll. So municipalities, as you know, will use our information to make informed decisions for their municipalities, including distribution of property taxes. So Ontario's property tax systems and generates approximately $30 billion in tax annually. So no, it's okay. One more. So there's 4 key players in the Ontario property assessment and taxation system. So we have the Ontario government, MPAC, municipalities, and property owners. So the provincial government, specifically the Minister of Finance, is responsible for setting assessment and taxation legislation, as well as policies. They also determine what the education property tax rate is, and underneath that umbrella also falls the ARB, or also known as the Assessment Review Board. And the Assessment Review Board is an independent body that adjudicates all of our appeals. So anytime a property owner maybe disagrees with MPAC, then they would be the individual, or they're the tribunal that we would go to determine a fair and accurate assessment. And they fall under the jurisdiction of the province. Then we have MPAC, which is an independent, and we're a non-for-profit corporation. We're funded by all Ontario municipalities. And our role is, like I said before, to accurately assess and classify all properties in Ontario. And we do this in compliance with the Assessment Act and regulations set out by the Ontario government. And we are accountable to provinces, municipalities, property taxpayers, and municipalities. And these are all set up by a board of directors that are comprised by provincial, municipal, and taxpayer representatives, and they are also appointed by the Minister of Finance. And then next we have municipalities. So municipalities determine their budget requirements, set tax rates, collect the property taxes, just basically to serve your budget, such as police, fire, what's necessary for your specific community, along with many other aspects that come along with that. And then finally, there's property owners. So property owners, as yourselves, they're the ones that pay the tax bills. But property owners also set the market value through, ongoing purchases and sales of properties on the open market. So our main objective is obviously to maintain our property database, and that's a very important one. So it's continuously updated so that municipal records are accurate for tax decisions. So what that means for us is that we inspect and assess new constructions, additions, and renovations in a timely manner. We track school support data. We complete requests for reconsiderations and appeal work. We respond to property owner inquiries, make sure that they're properly educated on how their assessment works, and to help them and municipalities understand the relationship between the two businesses. And then in addition, we also support municipalities. We provide ongoing support, which is like an example of today. We give them access to Municipal Connect, where they can obtain assessment-related information right at their fingertips every day. And then we also work collaboratively on different innovative projects. So one of the newest ones would be cloud permit, like our digital permitting, and lots of municipalities are moving towards that. So we try to work together collaboratively to ensure what we can do to meet the specifics for each municipality's needs, depending on size. So we also update every single property assessment in Ontario based on the same legislated valuation date, and we call this an assessment update or a reassessment. So the valuation date for the most current reassessment, which took place in 2017, was January 1st, 2016, and that was originally to be from 2017 taxation to 2020. But we're still maintaining on that January 1st cycle. So when this happens, we determine what every single property in Ontario would have been worth based on market evidence as that same date all across Ontario. So the reassessment was scheduled to occur in 2020. However, this was postponed by the government, basically to provide stability to Ontarians and also to enable municipalities to focus on responding to challenges that were posed by the pandemic. So as a result, as I said, our valuation date is still January 1st, 2016 for all properties across Ontario. Now, that doesn't mean our work doesn't stop, so we regularly reevaluate properties to ensure that our assessments are up to date, that their values are stay the same. If there's any new changes, then we definitely make sure that those changes are reflective in their current property assessment. So provincial legislation will determine when MPAC can conduct its next property-wide assessment, but as of right now, we're still on January 1st, 2016. So when that happens, and we do have notification from the Minister of Finance, and we have valuation date, there's kind of a couple pieces that how this works. So the valuation date, like I said, if you look at this slide, January 1st of whatever date, that would be the next date that we would use to determine what all property values are worth. Then we would mail out notices to every owner in a form of a property assessment notice, and it outlines what their assessment notice, their value is, and some main focus details on their specific property, as well as they have the option to go to a website about my property, and they can see more detailed information on there. And what happens is when your property assessment increases from one base year to the next, that value increase is phased in equally over the 4 years. So you see there's 25% each year. If your property happens to decrease, then it flatlines on the first year. So there's the correlation between the valuation date, notices being mailed, the increase over the 4 years, and then owners have the opportunity to review their information. If they're unhappy, they can file a request for reconsideration at free of charge. So when we value properties, we have 3 different approaches to value that we use. So there's a direct comparison, the income, and then the cost. So the direct comparison approach is the most common, and that's basically the sales approach to valuating properties. So we value the properties based on open transactions between a willing buyer to a willing seller. And the values of those properties will also determine the values of the unsold properties. So there's there's 5 main factors that will make up your 85% of your total property assessment. So first one being location, lot dimensions, exterior square footage, the quality of construction of a home, which makes up with the fenestrations and the quality of finishings, and then the age of the property. And those are the 5 things that make up the total value of your property. And then we account for many other variables, probably an extra 200 different variables, varying from number of bathrooms, bedrooms, basements, et cetera, on and on and on, because we know that each property is very unique, and we have to accommodate for each property being the way they are. So then we have the income approach. And basically the income approach is the ability to earn revenue. So basically by the way that the landlord earns rent and they can generate through the ability to lease the space, it's not basically the amount of money that the business is run from that location or generated, say by the Walmart or the No Frills. It's what the landlord generates for income, and that's how that process has worked. And then thirdly, we have the cost approach, which is this is for properties that don't trade on the open market, and they're a little bit more unique. So they have basically a three kind of things to the approach of that. So we first calculate the cost of like what the building would actually be to rebuild. Then secondly, any depreciation or obsolescence that would be applied to that type of building, and then add a land value. So basically A plus B plus C gives you your value of any cost building. So what brings us to a property? And there's a few different things. So we will be triggered to visit a property basically on a sale, request, say, from a municipality or a property owner, a request for reconsideration or an appeal. But our biggest one is building permits. We regularly visit properties to ensure that our data is accurate as to what's actually reflected there. So we take our building permits and plans and generate them into new assessment for municipalities. So the quicker that we get the building permits and the more accurate that we have them, the quicker we can turn them back into assessment and new growth for municipalities. So on average, we process about close to 300,000 building permits for new development and renovations each year. And we realize that municipalities determine or rely on that information to, help set their levy and make sure that they have the, that can go towards their services and what budgeting factors that they can use based on this new growth. So after we assess a property, we mail out the property owner a property assessment notice, kind of how I mentioned earlier. And sometimes, property owners don't necessarily agree with, what they see on the paper, and or maybe there's, physical data errors, et cetera. So they do have options, and some of the things that you might get asked, especially, on councils, what can I do? What are my options, right? And so there are a few. So the first thing you would ask them is, could you sell your property for, your assessed value? And if the answer is yes, then typically you would be fairly assessed. If the answer is no, then you can, we go to the next question and ask a little bit more and get into more digging. They can visit that About My Property, and on there they can go and look at sold properties in their neighborhood. They can check out the physical data about their properties. They can see their neighbors and what they're assessed at, and they can kind of complete their own comparable report to determine that they are, fairly and accurately assessed, right? And then the next thing would be, if they still don't disagree, then they can file a request for reconsideration, and that's free of charge. And we work with property owners. We come out to the property, we visit with them, we give them the education piece on how assessment works, and determine how they or what their concerns are. Make sure all the physical data is up to date. And then hopefully we can, come to some sort of amicable decision. And if not, then they still have the option to file an appeal with the Assessment Review Board. And as I've noted earlier, that's under the provincial government, and they're under their own, they're like an independent body, so we work separately with them. Now, there is a cost for filing an appeal, depending on whether you're a residential or commercial property. There are different values, but that's the kind of the step 1, 2, 3, 4 that they can work through. If they do have concerns and you want to be able to help them navigate through that, would be a good thing, and they can educate themselves on there. And I know she just left, but so in anticipation of our next province-wide assessment, which we don't know, we've put together some resources to help kind of with some of the misconceptions that people and homeowners are a little bit, maybe not necessarily concerned about between the relationship between assessed values and taxation. So there's a really good video, and it's like just a 3-minute video, and it goes over the relationship between assessment and taxation that you can use for yourselves, but also if have homeowners that are unsure, that's really good. There's also some one-pagers, and all this stuff can be found on mpact.ca. So now, Carolyn, do you want to play the video, or do you want, what do you guys do, or would you rather just wait on your? If you go to the next slide, there's a link there. It's on a YouTube. It's on a YouTube link, so there'll be a ad, and then it would play.
It might work if you share with sound, but if not, if I had the link, I could play it from this laptop here.
And many municipalities have been putting it on their website as a resource for homeowners, and it's, somewhere you can direct them to watch. And it's it's 3 minutes. It's pretty short and sweet. It basically goes through an explanation of basically a town that has 3 different homes and shows the values, if the values change, how the tax rate changes, and essentially just kind of lays it out very, very, very simply. And it's well worth the watch for a few minutes, and I would suggest that probably all of you watch it before, you sending your constituents to be watching it as well. So, but I know the girls will get it all sent out to you. So there's a few other ways that you can kind of stay connected with us. We do have a monthly newsletter, and it's called In Touch, and it gives some basically monthly updates on what's happening in MPAC. Then we have resources on, like I said, mpac.ca. We also are on social media on Facebook, Twitter. We have a YouTube channel, and then we do host monthly webinars, and they're on our website as well. That some of them are pretty informative depending on what hot topics you have in your municipality. And thank you very much for having me here today. I know I said to the girls I would be back again to get to meet you all again, hopefully at some point in time, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Any questions from council? Revimo?
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. And I was wondering, I think one of the last presentations I heard from Al Spasic, the chair, was that MPAC was working on a, to my term, a library for municipalities where there's the information on appeals and just I think meat for motions and information for municipalities. Motions meaning going before the court, or?
Yes.
And so is that completed yet, or?
It is. So that would be the Annotated Assessment Act, the AAA, and each municipality has one login that they can use and they can be shared. So if you do want to participate in appeals, then you can look at previous court decisions and case law to help you come up with like a decision on how you would want to respond to that. Is that what you're
Yes.
you're speaking
Yes.
of? Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
a resource.
I can reach out to ensure, well, somebody does, but I don't know off the top of my head who has the login, but someone within the municipality has access to it. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So I can work with Victoria and Carolyn and figure out that.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Thank you very much for coming.
Welcome.
Council is still learning all these things, so it's great to be updated on impact and stuff like that. So we appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for having me. Any questions, please, let me know. We're here as a resource to help out as any way we possibly can. So thank you again, and hopefully I look forward to working with you over the next few years. So I will give you back your time. Thank you.
On to C3. Final budget presentation presented by Treasurer Broom. I will hand it over to the Treasurer.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, before Aaron starts, I just want to note that for the first time, we provided notice that this would occur and offered the opportunity for anybody from the public who wished to speak to council to do so. Nobody registered. And we also provide an opportunity to send in questions or comments, and none were received by the clerk. So I know this is new for the town, but just in terms of added transparency going forward, that there was an opportunity for people to come forward. But Aaron's still going to take the opportunity to review the final budget with some key highlights, and then the actual bylaws will be coming to the next meeting. But wanted to note that we did put notices out and provided opportunities for people to either share their comments or come in person. And no news is good news. Nobody sent in comments, and no one is in the room tonight.
Thank you. Treasurer Broom.
Thank you. So as you know, we started out in December with an orientation of our department and then tabled the budget on February 28th. So this agenda is just a summary of everything that we've covered over the past couple of meetings, and that brings us to today's meeting, which is the passing of the final budget. The schedule on the next slide outlines that we tabled it on February 28th, and then it went to each individual committee for review, and then back to the committee of the whole on March 28th. And here we are today on April 11th to adopt the final budget. So the next slide explains the tax levy. It's calculated based on all expenses, less grants, less user fees, less transfers from reserves equals our levy, and the levy is the amount that's to be raised through the taxes after all of our revenue's been collected. Your tax dollar, so this slide just basically explains to you that when we collect $100 in revenue, that 66% of it is retained by the town, and 10% sent back to the school boards, and 24% is sent to the county. The strategic outcomes, so this is the outcome of this budget. Our hopes is to maintain our level of service, continued investment in infrastructure renewal, the preparation for growth and the highway expansion, a solution to the source water discoloration and the drinking water system, the continued support for strategic partners and community groups, and ongoing intermunicipal collaboration, improved customer service and corporate communications, review of services and long-term planning, the focus on affordability with net levy increase lower than inflation, and revenue generation with tenant lease space for key partners and job creators. This slide just breaks down our operating revenues by type. So taxation is 54%. Now this 54% does not include the county or school boards. So in the next slide, you'll see that it's sorry, you won't see that in the next slide in a dollar amount, but it's $10 million in our levy that we're raising. Our Ontario and federal grants is 17%, other municipalities is 1%, our tenant revenues is 6%, and fees and charges and other is made up of 22%. The next slide breaks down by the department. So corporate services is 75% of our operating revenue. Community services and library is 1%. Planning and development is 7%. Infrastructure and public works is 4%. Parks and rec is 10%. Police, employee service boards 2%. And fire and protective services is 1% of our overall revenue. The next slide shows our tax-supported operating expense by type. So overall, the largest expenditure we have in our municipality is our salary and benefits at 43%. Principal and interest on long-term debt is 1%. Professional contracted services, which includes our audit, is 13%. Fuel and heating costs is 2%. Material and supplies is 3%. Taxes and utilities is 3%. This also includes our hydro and water. Insurance is 2%. Transfers to reserves is 12%. Police service boards is 12%, which policing is approximately $1.8 million, and other operating expenses are 9%. So tax-supported operating expenses by department broken out. Corporate services is 29%. Community services and library is 5%. Planning and development is 9%. Infrastructure and public works is 19%. Parks and Rec is 15, Police and Police Services Board is 12, and Fire and Protected Services is 11. Now, I can go through those and break those all down for you if you wish, or if anybody has any questions on how those numbers are arrived at, I most certainly welcome any questions if you do have any.
Councilor McWhorter?
Mayor, to you, Director. Corporate services, what exactly is that? Seems to take up a big chunk of the money.
The reason it takes up a big chunk of our money is that's where we collect our taxation. So that's a big part of our revenues. For expenditures, it's like our bank service charges, our legal and accounting, insurance, IT, it's clerks and treasury, yeah. So it's town hall complex, the operating costs, the Sunshine Coach is included in that department. And this senior management team, the transition costs are included in that as well. Okay? And the mayor and members of council, your budget is included in the corporate services as well. That explains it
That's
all.
why.
Our next slide is our overview of the 2023 payroll compensation budget. So in total, we have a full-time equivalent count of 74.8. Total hours is 146,219. Our total payroll budget is $8,074,187. So that includes benefits and OMERS. It includes everything. So this year, the changes were our CAO position is budgeted for a full year, where it was only budgeted for half a year. In 2022, we have 14 summer student positions. There was a cost of living adjustment of 2% approximately with the union contracts. And due to organizational changes, salary allocations have been made in between the departments. The next slide is just a breakdown of our capital and projects and how they're funded this year. So we've got a total capital project cost of $49 million. $334,000 is coming from taxation, $7 million from reserves, $658,000 from DCs, $12 million from debt, $23 million from grants, and other revenues of $6 million covers that off. Just a high-level review of our capital projects for infrastructure renewal. So we've got continued investment in our roads. We've got Highway 60 O'Brien Road, Gillen Damask is being completed this year. Starting up new is the Highway 60 O'Brien Road, Mass to Wrangler. The design, Joffrey Hague Dufferin, McNabb Crescent, sidewalk and curb, Gillen Road, Hall to O'Brien with the multi-use pathway, and Argyle, Lockheil, and parts of Opiongo and Hall Avenue. The Maloney Road culvert will be replaced. We have some shovel-ready projects, which are Dominion and Lynn, 8th Street, Monroe and Harry, and the Mattaway Park Drive water main design. So we have supporting growth. Some of these projects are the official plan review, the growth management strategy, the attainable housing action plan, industrial land secondary plan, the Opiongo and area growth area, the review of BIA CIP business retention expansion, and the Ottawa Valley Business Hive. So within the services and facilities part of capital, we're replacing the mechanical diagnostic for fleet management, the fire equipment such as SCBA's, communications and building repairs. The town hall and library both have renovations going on to accommodate some new tenants. Replacement of roof at 550 Hall. There's new windows and doors being replaced at the Mill Museum. New playground structure at Mattaway. The completion of the Mattaway expansion. New equipment purchase for the fitness center, gymnasium, and gymnastics. A thermal drone for marketing, inspection, and survey work. The replacement of the 2007 Sterling tandem and plow truck, which was originally included in 2022 budget, will be coming in 2023. The replacement of the 2013 sidewalk machine and attachments, and the replacement of 2 pickup trucks, one in the fire and one in the recreation department. A ball diamond groomer and floor scrubber and landfill loader, rims and tires will be replaced. The next 2 slides show our transfers to and from reserves. I'd just like to note that these numbers are not audited. Our 2022 year end has not been completed yet, so they are subject to change. The balance at the end of 2022 has a starting balance of approximately $13 million. However, some of the projects for 2022 have not yet been financed, so these numbers will be updated when the 2022 year end is completed. But it just goes to show you the money that we're putting in and taking out for this budget. This is a schedule that just shows you a comparison over the last 5 years of the reserves and deferred revenue, so money that's went in and money that's went out. In 2022, there was approximately $2 million that went in and 1.7 that went out in reserves, deferred revenue, so that's gas tax and connecting link funds. There was $3.2 million that went in and $1.9 million that went out. In 2023, monies in is approximately $4 million, and monies out is going to be approximately $10 million. So we are spending a little bit money out of reserves this year, but again, these numbers are subject to change based on the 2022 year end. Yes.
So Dick?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Sidney. So, Director Broom, that was a lot of information, so
Yeah.
I just kind of want to, so at the start of 2022, we had $13 million in reserves,
Correct.
and at the end, that was at the start of 2022. What were we at the end of 2022?
Sorry, that's at the end of 2022. That
the
balance,
end.
that's at the end, but what I'm saying is that number is not 100% accurate because we haven't completed our 2022 year end. So when we complete our year end, we finance all of our projects from 2022, and any of those that use reserves, we've done an estimate to say, okay, we've spent this much out of reserves, and we've tried to get this down to as close as we can, but until we actually complete our year end, this number might change a little bit.
Okay, so we started, it's going to change a little bit, we know that.
Yes.
But we started 2023 with 13 million.
Approximately, yes.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
And at the end, we're anticipating to be at about $7.8 million after we've financed everything and put money back into reserves based on this budget.
Councillor McDonald?
And just to confirm, from what I understand in some of the past meetings we've had, we're still, even though we're going into them hard, we're still in a healthy place at this point in time?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You can go to the next one.
If I can just add, having worked in other places where we didn't have $1 million in reserves because we were a smaller place, I think the ratio that we look for is 1-to-1. So if we're bringing in $10 million in levy, we would hope to, over future years, to bring the reserves back up. But I think the close to 14 million in reserves was more than healthy, and the money is put in reserves to pay for projects, and this budget has a number of multi-year projects that are coming to completion, which is natural that we're going to be drawing down. The hope, though, is we get close to a 1-to-1 ratio in terms of taxation to reserves, but I would say that compared to others, we're doing fairly well.
These slides just summarize our current long-term debt, which was reviewed during the budget process, but I'll go through them again. Our current debentures are for Highway 60 downtown, which will be paid in full in 2040. Our landfill equipment, which should be paid in full in 2039. Our sewage treatment plant, which will be paid in full by 2051. Our solar will be paid in full by 2036. Our water treatment plant will be paid in full by 2027. Our upcoming debt, looking ahead, is our Mattaway expansion, where we're looking to debenture approximately $12 million with payments commencing in 2024. The 2023 budget provides sufficient capacity for future debt payments if the term is 25 to 30 years. There was temporary borrowing that was needed in 2023, which was funded through the project contingency. That was to get us through until we had other revenues come in. The term and the amount of the debenture will be determined by you, by council, in either Q3 or Q4 at the substantial completion date of the project, with the final debenture bylaw being passed. Our upcoming debentures in 2025, looking ahead, we may require debt for the Argyle, Lochiel, and parts of Holland Opiongo project. The estimated requirement for this is approximately $3.6 million. The next slide shows you our options for the Mattaway expansion project. The debentures just shows you over 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30 years what our payment would look like. And now this was using the interest rate when I originally tabled the budget, so that is subject to change, but this is what it kind of looks like, and this shows you what our principal and interest payments would be, as well as the cost of the borrowing over the amount of term that we so choose. This is the slide that shows you our annual repayment limit based on the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. So they base their information on our previous year FIR information. When I originally tabled the budget, we only had the 2022 annual repayment limit. Now we have the 2023. It's still keeping in very close to what I originally tabled. It's calculated based on our net revenues. It's 25% of our net revenues, less any of our carrying costs. Gives us the $2.7 million. So what I've done is I've taken off what we estimate our 25-year debenture would be for Mattaway expansion, which is $809,000. Based on our annual revised repayment limit, we would be able to debenture approximately $25 million over the next 25 years with a current borrowing rate of 4.43 from Infrastructure Ontario and still be within the revised annual repayment limit. So we still have room.
Revimo?
Thank you. So when the water plant, yes, the water plant comes off in 2027, that will then free up some more room, should we have a significant project going forward?
Correct. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
For you, Mayor, to you, Director. Going back to the Nottoway project at $12 million, it's still not clear whether that's going to come in under, could it come under $12 million? We just don't know until June, right? That's still sort of up in the air.
It's still up in the air. I think once the project is finalized, then we'll take a look at it again and look at our options. Again, it's up to you. It's final decision of council, the debenture amount and the years that we amortize it over. But we'll take a look at that and see what our best option is. And once it's completed, I think we'll have a better idea where we're at.
If I may, we haven't heard, or I haven't heard anything in a little bit. Are we still on track for June? And I'm hopeful if they stay on track for June, they'll stay with the budget that we've already sort of looked at.
Yeah, my understanding there's an update coming to the next standing committee.
Yep. So Director Wall's been bringing monthly updates, including budget with Aaron support to the Rec Committee, and so there's another one coming this month. In terms of potentially going below 12, the contingency is just below $1 million. So you'll only see savings if you don't dip into the full contingency, but right now it's at $1 million. So best case scenario, you're borrowing $11 million, but we still have kind of the finishing works of the project to deal with. So it could be 11.5 potentially, but we'll only know at project completion. But so far, and Jordan can correct me if I'm wrong, we're no changes to the schedule and no major overages.
That was what I was hoping for. As long as they stay on track and stay with our timeline, we should be at least no more than that. So, okay, great.
Okay. Moving on to the water and wastewater budgets. So this one is a money in, money out. So our water and wastewater budgets, you'll see that the revenues come in and the expenditures go out. Water has a total budget of $2.8 million and wastewater has a total budget of $2.7. Some of our highlights that are within this budget is the 29 Arthur Avenue, the land strip purchase. There's minor capital and maintenance included in the wastewater and water budgets. Contributions to reserve in the water of $362,000, contributions from reserve of $89,000. Our aqua contract through water and sewer. Water were $700,000, sewer is $905,000. There was a change in fees and charges, so our water rates went from $268 per cubic meter to $275. Our wastewater rate went from $242 to $244 per cubic meter. And our base rates went from $42.30 to $44.84 for water, and our wastewater went from $48.94 to $49.42. And those are based on the regular meter size. Other size were increased proportionately based on the 2.5% increase. Some of our capital projects in water and wastewater are the manganese treatment system, so that's for the discoloration of water. That's a total cost of $614,000. That's going to be funded from the water reserve. And our standpipe water tower, the mixing system, it needs to be repaired. It's a total cost of $663,000. In 2023, we anticipate $62,000 in costs, which will be funded from the water reserve. The next two slides summarize our user fees and charges. I'm not going to go through them all. I'll just highlight in some of the departments what has changed. In the finance and admin, our dog and cat tags increased from $10 to $20 from January to March, and in April to December it went from $12 to $25. Our tax certificates increased $60. They were originally $40. And this is all in keeping with our comparator municipalities and for our increase in costs for performing some of these duties. Infrastructure and public works, our water on, water off went up to $65. Our landfill, the free on removal went up to $40. Our bag tags increased from $2 to $3. And there's a new fee, a landfill opening fee of $100. In Parks and Rec, we had some ice rates changes. The schools went to $65 an hour. Our soccer fields, minor is $25 an hour, adults $40. Our ball diamonds, there was some tournaments that were added into our fees and charges schedule. So per day for all 3 diamonds. For minors is $300 a day. In adults, it was $375 for all 3 diamonds per day. Our new facility, we have the gymnasium at $25 an hour. It's a new rate for a dance studio at $20 an hour. And our fitness center rates have increased for the resident and non-resident. For 1 month, it's $50, non-resident is $75, 6 months, $225, non-resident is $337.50, and so on. Our fire and protective services, our fire permits went up to $105. This is due to the fact that we're now offering the service that you can purchase them online, so we have to recover some of the costs for PayPal, etc. Our planning and development, there's been multiple changes through that. We have a new recirculation fee, which is a 50% of the original prescribed fee. We have new for the Ottawa Valley Hive, cubicle rentals, office rentals, the hub boardroom, conference room, council boardroom, and council chambers. So that's just kind of a high-level review of those user fees and charges. If you have any questions, just let me know. So moving on to our total budget. Our total tax-supported operating budget is $24 million. Total water budget is 2.8. Total wastewater is 2.7. And our total capital budget is 49. So that's what we just reviewed in those last couple of slides. Our total overall budget is $79,090,780. Now for the tax levy and the 2023 impact and the growth. So our 2023 levy is $10,063,121. This is a difference of $395,000 from our 2022 levy. We started out with a 2023 levy 4.96, and we've got CVA growth of 2.46%. So the impact on the ratepayer is 2.5%. The amount below shows what the town portion of the tax impact per assessment is. So I want to confirm that's just the town portion because the county rates have not yet been passed yet. So they will most likely be passed by the end of this month, and they will most likely see a bit of an increase. So in saying that, the estimated annual tax impact on $100,000 of residential assessment in the town of Renfrew is $29. The estimated annual tax impact on the average household assessment, which impact says is $171,000, is $49. So our next step is to pass the tax rates at our council meeting on May 23rd. and the bylaws will be coming for our budget, and the water, wastewater, the BIA levy, and the fees and charges will be coming up at our next council meeting.
Perfect, thank you. Again, fantastic budget, very well done. Thank you to the Treasury Department and the Clerk's Department and every other department that worked on it, but I think Treasurer Broom, for your first kick at the can, you did awesome, so thank you very much for that. Any questions, Council? Councillor Dick?
Thank you, Mayor Sidney. Just a comment to the public watching, because I know when I used to watch this, I used to always get upset because there was no questions asked at this time, but I think it's important for the public to know that we went through all this through committees, lots of, meetings, emails and stuff like that. There was lots of discussion, lots of questions asked regarding, the tax levy, and I cannot stress enough to the public that the council and everybody involved, we asked a lot of questions, we did a lot of work. So that, if you're watching tonight for the first time and we just breezed through it, this is why we breezed through it, because we already knew all this. This was more a public overview, so I just wanted to make sure that there was a lot of banging heads, and the the Treasury Department did an amazing job. All the committees, in my opinion, did an amazing job, and I'm really proud that we were able to keep it at a 2.5 increase this year. So thank you to everybody involved.
Thanks. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none. Thank you very much. Good job. Moving on to environment. I'll have you. The motion is that Renfrew Town Council approve the entering into an agreement for design, tender, and construction administration services with JP2G Consultants, Inc. for the Gillen Road project at a cost of $54,467.04, inclusive of non-refundable HST. Can I have a mover, please? Revimo, seconder. Councillor McWhorter, any questions on this? Revimo?
Thank you. The project itself is a shave and pave from O'Brien into approximately the entrance into No Frills, and then the rest of it is a bit of a deeper dive down to take the 2 levels of pavement off and spot replacement of curbing and the drains along the side. So the committee was very, very impressed with the proposal coming forward, and should note that there is some expected savings, as JP2G is already in here for another job. So in this instance, it was the recommendation, and the committee agreed with it, that it should be sole sourced, given that they would be here for the summer anyway and could add this in. It's not quite our usual practice, but we felt comfortable going with that. There was some discussion about the design too, where it intersects with Hall, about whether or not to do some work to get ready for Hall when Hall is expanded out to Wrangler Road and out towards the highway coming 417. Some left turning lanes or right turning lanes, as that is a 4-way stop. So that's going to be looked at. It may not be included in the project at this point, given how much time may lapse, but it was a very fulsome and good discussion.
Councillor Dick?
Thank you, Mayor Sidney. Through you. Revimo, was this one of the projects that was not originally a plan, but this council kind of pushed for a kind of a new road, shave and pave, or was this always on the books?
I don't know that it was ever formally there. It was always circling around, and something else would replace it to my recollection, in the last 3 or 4 years. But it became quickly apparent this year with the freeze thaw cycle that it was at its end of life early this year and probably last year. But yes, it did come with input, I think, from council and staff saying, look, this is a fairly heavily traveled corridor. It also is going to take on a pretty prominent secondary role, and it should be brought up to get ready for that.
And further to that, I think, as everybody would agree, every road is on our radar. But I do think that this council has pushed the most on a shave and pave. So not that we didn't do it before, but we were definitely looking at it, and it's a good one to do, so.
Got to add to, as has been our custom here at the town, is a fairly aggressive approach at looking at each project and adding the multi-use pathway. So there'll be a multi-use pathway along that side as well. So it'll be an intermediate distance for people as it connects the rest of the pathways. So it's, again, a strong commitment to active living.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this? All in favor? Carried. Thank you, council. The Renfrew Town Council accept the Renfrew Wastewater System 2022 Annual Report as information. Mover, please. Councilor McWhorter, second by Councilor Dick. Any questions? No questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you, council. Seasonal patio. Sorry, review.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. Very quickly, pitching week will be taking place the week of April 17th and 23rd. The committee and staff were very adamant that this should continue. It's a valued exercise for our community. It shows a level of caring that we want to continue to foster. I'm sorry. So anyone that's interested in participating, they're encouraged to reach out to the town office, Waste Management Department. And so bright yellow garbage bags and disposable gloves will be provided. The current curbside garbage and leaf and yard waste collection contract expires April 2024. And so in hopes of gaining some cost savings, we've requested that staff start working on releasing a joint tender with Armpire and McNabb Braeside. Those are two of the partners that we're working with right now. And in short, it makes sense to have a larger grouping, because then a contractor can keep their trucks busy full-time instead of if it's a smaller grouping, then we don't produce enough volume and have long enough routes to keep a truck busy for the full week, so it's more expensive for us. So by joining with somebody else, the truck is utilized more and the cost goes down for the contractor to lease or to purchase. So it makes a lot of sense for us to do that. You'll see an update provided on the Blue Box transition. There's no real significant, that we're aware of at this point, anticipated changes to the level of service for the eligible sources, and you'll note that word eligible. However, collection is going to need to be arranged with commercial, industrial, and other non-eligible sources. We estimate that's about 220 stops at this point. And so staff are currently working on an agreement with our present provider to provide collections for these stops during the transition period. So it's being sorted out and discussed at the provincial level, but at this point we will still have a role in Blue Box. It'll be to those 220 ICI stops. We already talked about Gillen Road, and we've talked about the wastewater systems. And you should note that Environmental Officer Springer advised us that the food cycler program is being expanded again. We're asking for eligible residents here in town to register or to call in. And there's been some expressed interest from neighboring municipalities. So staff is currently taking a look at whether or not food cycler and the other funding source, if there is a funding source, will allow us to join with them for collaboration so we can get more of this food cyclers. We did get a lot of calls with the first iteration of this program from people outside saying, can I join? And then when you ran the postal code, found out that they didn't live within town. So that's what I can report on behalf of the committee and the chair. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any questions? Okay. Moving on to D3.1. That Renfrew Town Council approve entering into an encroachment agreement with Caresway Restaurant, Inc. with respect to the use of a portion of public highway known as Raglan Street South for installation of an outdoor patio for property located at 168 Raglan Street South, having roll number of 47-48-000-055-11800. Mover, please. Councillor McDonald, second by Councillor Dick. Any questions regarding this? Pretty straightforward. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, council. Second motion is the Renfrew Town Council approve entering into an encroachment agreement with Finnegan's Roadhouse with respect to the use of a portion of the public highway known as Raglan Street South for the installation of an outdoor patio for property located at 302 Raglan Street South, having roll number of 47-48-000-030-01300. Mover, please. Councillor Dick, second by Councillor McDonald. Any questions? I just have one comment that I know the planner is here. With regards to that accessible parking space that does get covered up, if we could look at moving that parking space to a different location nearby, either up one or whatever. But I think if we could just put that in the minutes that that's being looked at, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Any other questions? Reeve email?
Not so much a question as a statement or an observation. I really think by allowing this kind of use with the patios, I think it allows a neighborliness or a closeness in the community, and for people to get out, and it certainly shows a hustle and a bustle. And I think we should recognize the patience or tolerance of people who do use the sidewalk, that they have to zip out around somebody, the patio, but it doesn't seem to be too onerous, because anytime I've been sitting out having my water and breadsticks, people will go by and chat with you on a regular basis. So I think it's I think it's a really good thing. It's a nice small town feel, and it's a closeness, especially given that we've got folks moving in and out of our community. I think it fosters that. So I really like this, and I hope we can get more.
And I think just to echo that, the two restaurants that have these types of patios are actually nice to look at. Like they're well made. They're not, so it makes it much more desirable to see as well. Councillor Dick.
Thank you, Mayor Sidney. Through you, I'd like Director Withers to just touch base on how he made it easier for these two businesses moving forward, because it came to our committee and I was very impressed on how making businesses more accessible, more easier for them to operate their business. Can you explain a little bit to the people watching tonight? Thank you.
I'd be glad to. Thank you, Councillor, and through you, Mayor Sidney. So just the change we're making is for the last several years, we've been requiring businesses to come back annually and renew their agreement, and we're making this kind of a one-time shot, so it's good until the town determines that it's not. So we'll just be requiring an annual submission of insurance and payment of encroachment fee, but there won't be a requirement to do this every year. So.
Great, thank you. Any other questions, comments? All in favor? Carried, thank you. D32. Just flip it over to him. You have it. Councillor McDonald, do you have something to read?
Yes, would you like me to deal with that?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. There were two motions put forth with regard to the growth management and official plan review and in the attainable housing action plan. However, new information has just been released by the province, and staff are in discussions to see how this will impact the study. So information will come forward to the next meeting on April 25th for the council meeting. So that's all we have to report for that.
Just a motion to postpone to April 25th.
So we need a motion to postpone to April 25th. Councillor Dick, second by Councillor McDonald. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Council. D33. The Renfrew Town Council adopt the homelessness resolution requested by AMO and its housing and homelessness policy update of March 15, 2023. Mover, please. Councillor McDonald, second by Reeve Emo. Any questions? Reeve Emo, do you have anything you want?
Thank you. I'd encourage council to support this, and I think you will. It's a reasonably well-written. It is a well-written and reasonable motion. It talks about homelessness as not being something new. It's something that has been built up over the years. I think in Renfrew County, it's particularly important because our population is fairly transient, and it's smaller, and I think it's necessary to recognize that rural homelessness is as serious as urban homelessness, and it does need a coordinated effort between all three levels of government and a variety of service providers as well. People don't, for the most part, choose to be homeless, and often don't know how to rectify it and need guidance and some assistance. So I think this is a lengthy motion, but it certainly addresses a path forward. And I sit on the AMO board, and we spent some time working on it with staff to craft it, and have had some consultation with the province as well on it. So thank you.
Any other questions, council? Hearing none. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, council. D34. That Renfrew Town Council approved the Downtown Renfrew Business Improvement Association board appointments as elected at their AGM. 2, receive the detailed 2023 Downtown Renfrew Business Improvement Association budget as presented. And 3, receive the 2022 Downtown Renfrew Business Improvement Association's annual report. Mover, please. Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor Dick. Any questions on these? Hearing none. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, council. D35. The Renfrew Town Council directs staff to proceed with option 2, review the BIA bylaws, policies, and procedures, and pursue potential expansion with a follow-up report by Q3 2023. Mover, please. Councillor McDonald, second by Revimo. Any questions about this? Yeah, Councillor Dick.
Thank you, Mayor Sidney. Just a comment that I stressed at the committee level was it's very important that the people involved in looking into this speak with the business owners in the area to get their feedback. I just don't want decisions made without getting some great feedback, and I just wanted to make that comment in council chambers tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I believe the process is going to be quite in-depth, and there's many different potential outcomes, whether it's downtown stays here and there's sections or whatever, but I do know the staff will be doing their due diligence and speaking with businesses. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you, council. And then I'm just going to hand it over to Councillor McDonald to wrap anything up from your committee that you feel you need to mention.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor. We've touched on most of it, but I do want to touch base with regard to the Hunter Gate subdivision and the Hall Avenue expansion history and the update. We had Director Withers and Director Aslan provided an updated assessment with regard to that area. Town staff sought to answer many of the questions brought forward by residents, and discussion with the developer is still ongoing, and approvals will not move forward until the required conditions are met. As we move forward, staff will update the committee on a monthly basis to ensure that council and the public are kept informed of the process. So that's about the only missing part we had with everything else we covered tonight. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to external boards and county reports. I think we'll go E1, 2, and 3 kind of together, Reeve, and we'll just hand it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you. Very quickly, the county council update. I can report with a great deal of satisfaction that we had a delegation from EVA, Ending Violence Against Women, to make a presentation to us about the inquest that was held last summer and the recommendations. And County Council declared that there is an intimate partner violence and violence against women epidemic, and we want the federal and provincial governments to act on the recommendations from the inquest as well. And so it was we took a different approach where we had them make a presentation, and we also had staff make a presentation about some of the things that we're already doing, and we've made a commitment to work with them to try and to be more supportive of victims of intimate partner violence. As well, we passed the resolution pledging our support for the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus 7 and 7 housing plan, regional housing plan. I will bring that back to you with a more fulsome presentation and structured presentation in the next little while. We're very proud of it and think it's going to be the way forward. Human resources. The senior leadership team is bringing forward an evaluation in the fall. They're consulting with staff, talk about work-life balance and wellness, manager relationship, talent attraction and retention, career and development plans, organizational awareness and connectivity, and county culture and pride. So we're trying to get a sense of our workforce again, and what we can do to support them and assist them in getting the most value out of being employed. Moving through that, there was the usual about some bylaws around corporate policies. Of importance, I think, to some of our communities, the Starter Plus program, Starter Company Plus program. If people are interested in joining it, there's a $4,000 grant. Participants receive fast-track training in writing a business plan, developing 2 years of cash flow projections, mentoring. And so there is an outreach and a virtual information session scheduled, unfortunately for today, from 10 to 11, and then on April 13th from 1 till 2. And participants must attend one of those information sessions. And it's a great program. It's really started a number of businesses in the community, as well as challenged others to consider starting a business later on. Ottawa Valley Tourism annual general meeting will be held at Maple House in Hardwood Lake on April 25th. So it'll be it's a great location, and it'll be interesting because that's the first time it's ever been in Brudenell and Dock Raglan. Quickly down through, the county is still looking for 2 planning positions, and as such, had to rearrange some of our priorities. So we're looking at plan of subdivision applications and applications that would generate employment, commercial or industrial, and local approvals. And there, as you are aware, there has been some changes to the Planning Act, which delegates some authority, so we passed a bylaw on that. We also, County Council also supported the Eastern Ontario Production Accelerator Fund, Filmstream, and I'll speak more about the Warden's Caucus. We did award a request for proposal for the construction of an affordable multi-residential housing project on Lee Street in the city of Pembroke. And so that should be starting in the next little while. And quickly running through, that would be pretty much it. There's some nuts and bolts things in terms of the operations. And I should note there is quite a fulsome discussion about assuming a drive, Campbell Drive in McNabb Braeside. They want to upload it, so we have some discussion around that. Their contention in brief is that it serves the intersection with Highway 417, and then that criteria alone makes it a county road. So there's going to be a pretty long discussion about that. The road does need some improvement as well, so that'll have to happen prior to anybody assuming any roads. So part of that is a road rationalization study, and then the McIntosh Perry is doing the transportation master plan for the county, and the county of Renfrew, town of Arnprior, townships of Boncher Valley, Horton, Laurentian Valley, Madawaska Valley, and Whitewater are working on that together. So that's what I can report to you with regards to the county council meeting. And with regards to Eastern Ontario Warden's Caucus, it was held March 9th and 10th, and you'll see some highlights. We had a presentation from Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and they talked about disaster mitigation, rural and northern Indigenous housing, permanent public transit, and there was interestingly enough, they've recognized the need for rural transit solutions as well and a fund for that. So they've made some presentations, and I'll try and get some information as I get more on that. Some conversations about the Rural Broadband Fund, and doubling the Proven Canada Community Building Fund, which is known as the Gas Tax Fund, to $4.4 billion per year, and increasing the annual index from 2% to 3.5%. So it recognizes the need for consistent investment by the federal government. And very quickly, the Southeastern Ontario Production Accelerator Fund, if you'll notice, I think it's about page 3. If you work down to it, we supported it, and we're in the process of writing letters and delegations to the province about this. It would be in addition to the Eastern Ontario Development Fund, not taking funds out of it. It's an idea that would be $25 million over each year for 5 years invested. So based on the estimates, because of the success, and it's modeled on the Northern Ontario Development Fund, they did it about 10 years ago, and it generates about between $100 and $140 million a year cash flow and business into Northern Ontario. So we're suggesting that it would bring an estimated full-time equivalent direct jobs of 2,500 to our area, Eastern Ontario, indirect jobs of 3,000, induced jobs of 900 for a total of 6,400. We think the estimated production labor income would be about 153 million, with the spin-off labor another 151 million. And so we think it's a very significant thing to be chasing and asking the province to consider. And very quickly, we had a conversation with Ontario Good Roads. They came in and talked to us about a road assessment system. It's called Austroads. It's a collective of Australia and New Zealand, and they perform road safety audits, and Good Roads is working with them to try and adapt it to Canada. We also did a small session on 2+1, and also about using more reclaimed asphalt pavement in roadways. And we passed the housing one, and then also ongoing reports. If you'll notice on page 6, I believe, the paramedic services, we're just starting to review it again from 2019, but we have some very significant concerns about costs. Part of the cost challenge for us is that our ambulances are being held in hospitals too long for offloading. And then as our population increases, the time at the door at people's homes is a little longer as well. Our strategic priorities, you can see very quickly, affordable and attainable housing. It talks about the 7,000, 7 in 7. Long-term care, the 4-hour care model, a human resources strategy, eliminate staffing agency, review and modernize the long-term care funding framework. We find that our staff are spending way too much time submitting reports, and it's a black hole because we're not sure what the reports are used for. Paramedic services, again, pressure on, we're talking about the increased pressures, and we want permanent and stable funding for community paramedicine. They need to modernize the dispatch service as well, and the offload delays. And so I can suggest to you, you'll see a more fulsome report on the paramedic system or services within, I believe, by the fall. We've hired a consultant who is a specialist, and they're going back and looking at all of the data, and it's quite alarming in the cost increases that could occur for us. And E3, I think you're all aware of. We're very proud of the VTAC funding announcement. MPP John Yakubuski worked very hard with former Warden Debbie Robinson and Paul Morrow, the CAO, as well as Mike Nolan and all of County Council to educate the provincial government about the excellence of VTAC. VTAC was formed at a time of need. It was formed when, as you know, we don't have much public transit here, a lot of one-person or one-vehicle homes, and some people were inbound and couldn't get in to be tested or to have their regular medical needs looked at. And so very quickly this came together, and we have some great partners. And so what we found is that right now we have about 30,000 people in Renfrew County, and the number is growing, or about 28% of our population that has no family physician. If you do not have a family physician, you don't have access to the medical system. You don't get tests, you don't get prescriptions, short of using a nurse practitioner or the emergency department, which, in fairness to the emergency department, you have a doctor here today who may be a locum or someone who's in specifically for a 2 or 3 day tour and then is gone. And so the test results come back and they sit unless you know they're there and go back in and get them. So it's no way to manage somebody's medical needs. So since March of 2020, there's been 79,000 family physician virtual assessments, 70,000 paramedic on-site assessments, and 5,500 paramedic home visits. And so each month, VTAC handles 5,000 calls, 3,000 assessments, and helps divert 1,000 patients from the emergency room. And feedback shows 86% of users feel their health care concern was addressed, which is a phenomenal number for service to people, in terms of their medical needs. And 93% are very happy with the service. And so we're quite proud of it, and we're very grateful to Minister Jones, and prior to Minister Jones, Minister Elliott. Minister Elliott, basically said, yeah, let's try this out. We think it'll work, or we hope it'll work, and you're telling us it will. And so it has evolved now to a virtual and a series of walk-in clinics as well. So it is the means of avoiding and changing from the traditional bricks and mortar medical service delivery model. I can say from my own experiences, we are able, in my past profession, which I sometimes do on weekends, we're able to call into VTAC, set an appointment for a client, go in and get them in a rural area, bring them out to where there's a cell phone, sit in the truck on Bluetooth, talk to a doctor for an hour or half hour or whatever, review the information, and they can get their meds renewed, or the doctor will then send us an email and we can go back and talk to them or phone them and say, look, you've got an appointment in Ottawa, or you've got an imaging appointment in Pembroke or Renfrew. And so it's a very effective means of ensuring that we're getting closer to having equal medical treatment to larger and more developed areas. And you're seeing more rural and small town Ontario communities looking at this model because they too are suffering from a lack of medical, a lack of family physicians. So very proud of it, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on it.
Any questions from council? Councilor McDonald?
Thank you, Mayor. While we have you here,
Sure.
Peter, with regard to the paramedic service, and I think the last time we had a presentation here from the county, when we take someone down to Ottawa and we do the process into the hospital system and all that, from what I understand, our paramedic service will get tied up and they become part of the Ottawa system for a bit if there's a bit of a crisis. Is that something that's going to be, what's the right word, maybe dealt with or
Well,
spoken to?
we have raised the issue a number of times, so we have a bit of a multi-layered approach right now. So you are correct. What happens for us is that once they get in there and they get caught in an offload delay, when they're coming back out, they're in the radio system. And so the nearest ambulance gets called. Now with GPS, you can zip down to Bank Street to 184 or whatever they have to go to and pick somebody up if necessary. So once they get caught in that area, it's hard to get them out. And so ourselves, Lanark County and Prescott Russell really get hit hard. And in fairness to Ottawa, sometimes their rural ambulances get pulled out into our areas, but it's not nearly comparable. So our multi-layered approach is having this study so we can generate information and say, look, a quarter of our time or an eighth of our time in a year is tied up in Ottawa. So we need compensation for that so we can backfill. We also need to talk to the city, and the city has Riley Brockington is the councillor who chairs that committee, and he's interested in having a conversation to see if there's a means of doing something differently. And once we have the information, then we'll be better armed to go and say, look, this isn't working for us. They already know it's not working for us. It's how do we fix it? It has a long-term detrimental effect on our service because we have people tied up in Ottawa, so then they're late getting back. Our machinery is tied up in Ottawa as well, which should be small potatoes, but it's not when all of a sudden your ambulances are getting an extra 100,000 kilometers over a 1.5 year because they're on the road all the time. And then you have to backfill staff, then they're late getting back, they're back in a shift the next day. So it has a wearing effect on the system, and at times we are worried that we may only have 3 instead of 10 here during the day, and maybe 2 at night instead of 7. And it's not how we want to conduct our business. So we are looking into it and trying to find a reasonable approach. The legislation basically says equal access, and everybody's ambulance is sort of owned by the province system. Even though we own them and operate them, it's sort of thrown into the soup. And so to extricate it's going to be tough.
Actually, that just created another curious question for me. If our Renfrew County paramedics are stuck in Ottawa for a longer period of time, and coming back, overtime kicks in, does the county bill the city? Or is this the county on the hook?
If I may, there used to be a provision, and I'm going to go out on a bit of a limb, up until about 6 or 7 years ago, where you could work out an arrangement with your adjoining municipality. Those regulations changed, so there's no recognized means of extra billing. If someone wants to work with you, then I think you're able to do that. But if there's a refusal to do it, there is no legislation or regulations I'm aware of that enforces the billing and then the payment.
So just to follow up to that, then technically county taxpayers are paying to service Ottawa people. Is that?
Unfortunately,
Okay.
yes.
No, I just want to make sure.
In fairness to the City of Ottawa, I believe they're hiring about another 150 paramedics this year and a number of other buses, and I think They did hire some last year too, so they are trying to do that. But then again, that causes another problem because a lot of our services around the city of Ottawa, we have a revolving circuit of part-time workers who work for all four. So if they get offered a full-time job in Ottawa, we may lose them. So that's going to cause us some problems with labor shortage, we think. So it's so interconnected. There has to be a bigger look at the picture than just each of us clutching at our ambulances to try to hold them at the border.
Perfect, thank you. Any other questions, council? Hearing none. BIA AGM minutes, that's just for information. Does anybody have questions on the BIA minutes? No. Moving on to communications. Oh, wait, sorry. On to F. The Renfrew Town Council confirmed the minutes of council dated March 28, 2023, and closed session minutes of March 28, 2023, understanding that they remain confidential. Mover, please. Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor Dick. All in favor? Carried. Communications. Council's aware of the workshop that is offered for that. And that's just information. Perfect. No motion of which notice has previously been given. So on to J, notice of motion. Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mayor. For the information of council, I intend to bring forward a motion for consideration on April 25th to direct the CAO to appoint an independent third party to do a fulsome review of the Mattaway expansion project. This will include procurement, funding, project management, and contract type. The motion will include that the assessment be managed by the CAO, with the final report being brought forth to Recreation, Fire, and Protective Services Committee by the end of 2023. This review will allow the town to have a thorough lessons learned document that can be applied to future projects. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Review.
Glad to see it. I think that was one of the first things we talked about when we got together. It makes sense. A mature organization should not be afraid to take a critical look at itself and its processes. I would go out on a limb and say I don't think there's ever been a contract ever awarded by anybody that's ever been perfectly executed and that everybody was happy at the end of it, and it makes sense to do it, especially when you take a look at the number of projects that we're going to have over the next few years, and some of them will be quite large and complex, and it makes sense to either develop the capacity to manage them or hire the capacity and manage those who you've hired to complete the project. So I welcome it, and I think it's a great move.
I also agree with that, and Councillor McDonald, I think it's an opportunity to learn and look at, moving forward what we can do better. So I'm actually looking forward to it. I think it's a great idea. So thank you. Good. I also have a notice of motion that I will be bringing forward on April 25th to direct staff to review our ATV bylaw. I think it's time that we take a look at that again and see if it's working, not working, if a bylaw is needed, or if it's more of a policy or whatever. So that'll be coming into the April 25th meeting as well. Sorry, my mic wasn't on. I'm just going to reread that motion that Renfrew Town Council convene in closed session with CAO Tremblay and Clerk Charbonneau remaining in the room pursuant to the following sections of the Municipal Act 2001. 1, Section 239B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. 2, Section 239F, advice that the subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for the purpose, more specifically how it relates to organizational structure, HR update, and sponsorship update, and that was at 7:32.
look alive.
We are, we're in open session officially.
Reporting that the CAO provided an update on the matters listed. Legal opinions were received pertaining to HR matters, as well as corporate sponsorships and naming rights. A report on sponsorships and naming rights will be coming forward to Standing Committee later this month. Motions are also coming forward for consideration in open session. So that Renfrew Town Council direct the following motions be brought forward. Just jump to the bylaw. The bylaw 20-2023 to amend the organizational structure policy to approve the 2023 organizational chart and non-union salary grid be taken as read and passed. Mover, please. Councillor McDonald, seconder. Revimo, any questions? All in favor?
Sorry, just for
sorry.
my clarification, I think it was it 20 or 21-2023?
It's 20.
It's got changed to 20.
20, okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry. It's a circled pen mark. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you, Council. The Renfrew Town Council direct the CAO to request from the Ontario Clean Water Agency an updated quote. Mover, please. Revimo, seconded by Councillor McWhirter. Any questions, comments? All in favor? That motion's carried. Thank you, Council. The Renfrew Town Council direct the clerk to bring forward necessary appointment by bylaw for senior leadership team. Mover, please. Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor Dick. Any questions, comments? All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you, Council. The Renfrew Town Council direct the clerk to bring forward amendments to the terms of reference for standing committees to reflect the new organizational structure. Mover. Councillor McDonald. Seconder. Revimo. Any questions, comments? All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Council. That 2023 draft budget be amended for one innovation to add a real estate and property coordinator by reducing the contribution to reserves with no net impact on the 2023 budget levy. Mover, please. Revimo. Seconder. Councillor McDonald. Any questions? All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you, Council. Just a bit of a statement from coming out of closed. Council approved a new organizational structure that will help the town of Renfrew meet its strategic goals for today and the future. This structure fully implements the CAO model and ensures succession planning at the director level. The approved organizational structure will also ensure staff are trained and supported as they serve the public and that the corporate resources are utilized in an efficient and productive manner. The town remains committed to its high level of service, planning for upcoming growth with the expansion of Highway 17 and infrastructure renewal. We will continue to support quality of life, including a wide selection of recreation, cultural, and arts programming. Information on associated appointments and job postings will be shared in the coming days. While we were in closed, two council members did a declaration of pecuniary interest. So, Councillor Dick, you were one.
Thank you, Mayor Sidney. Just to let the public know that during our closed session, I had to declare a pecuniary interest in one of the topics, which was the naming rights of Mattaway. I am an employee of the company who's leasing the naming rights of Mattaway expansion. Therefore, I declared a pecuniary interest, and I left the room during those discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McWhirter.
Yes, to you, Mayor. During the same closed-door meeting, I declared a pecuniary interest. It was to do with an HR matter. My wife works in the department closely with some staff there, so I thought it best I declare an interest.
Thank you very much, Council. I just will reiterate, both councillors did leave the room, and then were brought back in at the respective times of when necessary. All right, bylaws. That the following bylaws listed on the agenda be taken as read and passed. 18-2023, Caresway Encroachment Agreement. 19-2023, Finnegan's Encroachment Agreement. and 21-2023 confirming. Mover, please. Review, seconded by Councillor McDonald. Any questions? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Council. Upcoming meetings, regular Council meeting, April 25th at 6. Strategic Priorities and Corporate Services, Standing Committee, April 18th at 10. Recreation, Fire and Protective Services, Standing Committee, April 18th at 2. Environment, Infrastructure and Public Works Committee, May 2nd at 10. And Economic Development, Planning and Tourism, Standing Committee, May 2nd at 2 p.m. Thank you, Council, for a very productive meeting. We are now adjourned at 9:19.
I'll get it for you.
See you, Jace.